Hello ladies, gentlemen, and everything in between. Today I'll be discussing a long unknown factor in pixel survival. Many people have taken time to carefully measure exactly how much damage is done to them by specific enemies in order to measure the differences in damage reduction. This video covers that in greater detail and without much room for error. How defense works in Pixel Survival Game 2 with Timothy. Let's get started. What will this video cover? What defense is, how it's calculated, and how it's applied. What is defense? Defense is used to reduce the health points lost from enemies' attacks. However, the amount of health you save isn't linear. That's what this video is all about. How is defense applied? This is Timothy. Oh no, there's a ghost coming to attack Timothy with 135 attack. Let's gear him up with a little sword and Santa hat. The ghost attacks Timothy. Oh no, he takes 14 damage. Why did he only take 14 damage? Because he has defense. Whoa, that's crazy. So what happened there? In order to see why he took 14 damage, we need to know how defense is calculated. So you take the armor that you have equipped. In Timothy's example, we have a Santa hat. We're going to assume it has 156 defense. The 156 defense turned 135 attack into 14 damage, right? But 156 minus 135 does not equal 14. So how do we create a formula in which this defense and this attack spit out 14? Let's talk about formula. Timothy is back, and he thinks it's necessary to know some things to have a better understanding going forward. Minimum defense, the lowest amount of damage reduction, and it comes from the defense bracket, which we'll talk about shortly. Maximum defense, the highest amount of damage reduction, it comes from your gear. Applied defense, a random number between the minimum and maximum defense. Using these, we can understand that monster's attack subtracted by applied defense is going to equal our final damage. So what is the defense bracket that I mentioned earlier? This is a chart which shows your minimum defense, which goes into the applied defense at different stages. Most players know about rapid increases in defense value at different stages. You can visibly see that here and compare it to other points of progression. During the early defense levels, you have a really low minimum defense, so low that it actually starts in the negatives under 11 defense. At these early stages, the minimum defense will increase in blocks and in gaps of 10, 20, and 50. Once you reach 151 defense, instead of using 10% to 25% of your defense for a minimum defense as it was prior, you finally get to the maximum boost of 30%. That is why 151 defense is so important. After 151, you can see a gradual incline here with a decent jump at 164. Things only change at 173 defense and above, where the formula then adjusts for a constant and consistent increase going forward. Instead of thinking of this as minimum defense is equal to defense plus 30% of defense, all minus 131, you could just think of it as 30% of defense and then add 42. So really, this just goes from an additional 39 at 172 to an additional 42 at 173. And then it increases by 1 for each defense upwards. For example, 174 is 30% of defense plus 43, and 175 is an additional 44. One important thing I did not mention in regards to the chart and different defense stages is that at Snow Valley area and above, having less than 160 defense causes the monster's attack portion of the formula to have an extra 40 points. This is a very significant increase. If you have any questions regarding all this, this is the most important part about what I'm sharing here, so feel free to ask questions on Discord about it. I will have lots to say on the matter. Let's look at an example so that you can really understand how it works. Let's take Timothy, give him 58 defense, and we'll bring a slug in and give it 65 attack. That's just the base attack of slugs in Medina Ruins. Despite Timothy being attacked by a slug, he'll still walk us through the steps for this example. First, you'll check the defense chart and choose the bracket which your gear defense falls into. For this example, we'll be using the expression of minimum defense is 16% of defense plus 9. If we plug in our numbers, this gives us around 18. Our applied defense will be a number between the minimum 18 and the maximum 58. We'll use both for this example. Remember from before, damage done is the monster's attack subtracted by applied defense. Our final results will look like 47, 7, or any value in between. If the applied defense rolled a number that was closer to the lower bound rather than the higher bound, that results in the enemy doing more damage to you. Usually, this is what players would call a critical hit. So we took our 65 attack and 58 defense, and in this particular situation, the minimum damage would be 7 and the maximum 47. Now, a new example here, which would be if we have 10,000 defense and only 65 attack, what happens there? Right? Our monster attack is subtracted by our defense. That's going to go into the negatives. It's going to be 9,000 in the negatives. And what happens? Well, anything that's under 0, such as negative 9,000, will be set to 1 by default. Right? You always take at least 1 damage when something attacks you. Let's reverse this rule. If we look at our chart, we can see that in certain positions we actually have negative minimum defense from 0 to 10. For example, if you have 1 defense, you're going to have an actual -3 minimum defense and a 1 maximum defense. Say it's 5, for instance. That's a better example. We can look at -3, -2, -1, then 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 5. And you can roll anything in between those. If you were to roll under 0, such as -3, -2, -1, instead of assuming that it's just going to automatically switch to 1, you're actually going to assume it's 0. The damage done is going to be its maximum value. There will be no defense considered, it'll just give you the raw attack. In this case, that would mean a full 10,000 damage. Even though you have 5 defense, it's not going to reduce to 9,995. It's going to give you the full 10,000. And that's all. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Oh, there's Timothy. Goodbye, Timothy. Hopefully you have a great rest of your week, and I'd love if you stopped by again sometime.